You may be holding on to trauma that your parents have passed down to you. One of the hardest realizations that you come to when you're an adult is realizing that a lot of the pain that you've been carrying, especially ever since you were young, it's not yours. It actually belongs to your parents. Whether your parents were immigrants or not, they were all still a part of the same system that we're in today. The same system that a lot of us are screaming, we no longer want to be a part of this system. Maybe the system is broken. Maybe it's rigged. So if you feel like you're a victim to the system, you're not alone. A lot of us have been feeling like this, especially after the whole 2020 pandemic, when we all started getting a glimpse of reality. Many of us were raised by parents who survived life, but never healed from it. The trauma, the pain that they endured, when did they ever get the freedom to express the pain and to release it in a healthy way? But in these immigrant households, survival was the only way. It became the priority. And this priority was not about emotional wellness or emotional awareness. Fast forward to today, and our parents are paying the ultimate price for being in the rat race. If your parents made up to $100,000 before the pandemic, they were doing well. Actually, they were doing more than well. They consider themselves part of a middle upper class. But if you fast forward today, just 5 years later, if your parents were still making that same amount, 100K, 110K, they've actually gone below the middle class level. So that means that they're not even considered middle class anymore. They're on the borderline of low class citizens. So this video is not to blame our parents and to say that they didn't help us heal, they never healed, they never raised us right. It's to understand the system that broke them, the system that promised them a certain kind of dream, and today they realize that dream was just a scam. Not that it was a scam. Many of our parents may have held a house, may have tried even a business or two, but how many of our immigrant parents actually made it far and beyond the aptitude of success? So not only are our parents dealing with the trauma of having to endure the rat race, even sacrifice time with their children and their family just to make ends meet, not only do they have that trauma of, even if they were an immigrant, they came to this country alone, not knowing the language, not having a guide or an idea at all about how to make it. Now, not only do they have that trauma, but they have the trauma today of the after effects of the pandemic, where they see now their own children do not have the same opportunities that they had back then. They felt shorthanded back then, but they made it through. And now they look at us today and they are worried for us, worried for themselves, but also worried about us. So a lot of those immigrant parents, they actually hold their kids back a little bit unconsciously, because they're afraid of their kids failing. They're afraid of their kids enduring the same loss that they went through. So sometimes this comes out subconsciously. You may even confront your parent about how they did not even pay attention to your emotions. They never connected with you. They didn't really, let's just say, motivate you to do what you wanted to do. A lot of our immigrant parents were expecting us to just graduate college and have a certain career type. Some of us even got those careers and our parents were just not happy with what we chose or with the quality of career that we chose. And so we don't have to blame them for the pain that made them act a certain way, but acknowledging it is so powerful, because then we can avoid falling into that same framework, because the system is different now. It's different than it was 30 years ago, and it's going to keep on changing. So if you are worried about yourself or your parents, if you're just in this predicament where you're not sure financially where you're going, it's completely normal, because the world is changing so much that we have to constantly adapt. I have a certain idea of my finances, of my future today, but next year it could be completely different. I need to have backup plans. I need to have different ideas or plan Bs just to make sure that I'm on my toes, because if war, if the economy, if, social injustice just shifts a little bit at all, I'm going to have to pivot as well, because Maybe my career choice doesn't align with where the future of AI could be going. All of these things we do have to think about. These are things that our parents didn't think about. Just examining or observing, the footsteps or the choices and steps that my parents chose to take. Observing that made me realize that a lot of times we didn't succeed because of the lack of keeping up with the times, right? The lack of not learning the technology, and just being afraid to change and do things outside of what the system had already taught us we should be doing. And not only do we just have to think about these things, because like I said, observing my parents, they didn't really think ahead 20, 30 years into the future. They were always thinking like maybe a year ahead at most 3 years ahead, just to gauge where their kids were growing, But truly, they even tell me, we never thought we were going to get old. But luckily for me, when I was 20 and my mom was diagnosed with cancer, so that's like a disease where you think that maybe they're going to leave us one day. Like just the thought of death or losing my mother forced me to think about my future, because the doctors were now telling me I was susceptible to cancer. So I did my research, blah, blah. Some of you guys know that story. But it just shifted. Something shifted to where my parents didn't think about the future. They didn't really think about leaving anything for their kids or building some kind of empire. And today, I want to do those things, because had my parents known about these things, and it's not their fault because no one taught them these things. There's stuff that rich families do that us middle class people just don't have any idea how to maneuver around, like systems, financial choices that will get your family ahead. Our parents didn't have access to all that stuff. They may have gotten a computer when we were young, but did they really know how to use it, or were we the ones mastering everything for them? So think about that for a second. And think about, have you ever asked your child for help too with their technology? And when you have, I hope you realize, wow, am I turning into my parents? Because that is the whole point of this video. Are we turning into our parents, or are we going to shift the energy and go into a better direction? Not to say that our parents made mistakes, because they did. Everyone makes mistakes. There's nothing wrong with our parents, doing life and learning a little bit of lessons and, making some mistakes, setting back, going forward. They never gave up on us. Hopefully some of us have a different story. We're not all fortunate, but for the most part, our parents didn't give up on us. And they make choices just based on their past and their pain. So if we can avoid making our choices based on our past pain, if we can make better choices in love that doesn't depend on how we were treated in our last relationship, if we can love our children in a way that isn't a repetition of how our parents were too busy to connect with us, are we going to perpetuate that? So this is what, today's video is all about. It's really about observing your parents, observing the patterns, the things that may have gone right, gone wrong, and analyzing your life and seeing, what do I want to give to this lineage now? What am I going to bring forward? What am I going to put out into the future? Because maybe I don't want it to be exactly like my parents did it. Maybe I just want to help myself so that I can help them, because you can't help other people before you get to that point of being able to even sustain yourself. Like if you can't pay for your own apartment or your own mortgage or anything like that, or your rent, how do you expect to take care of your parents? Like maybe they can come live with you, sure, but are you going to be covering everything that they would need if you can't even cover your own finances? So this is what I mean. It's not just energy, because this works with money, this works with health, this works with your mentality, this works with just your physicality, it works with your emotions. If you're not emotionally well, how can you help someone else? If you're angry and someone comes along who's sad, can your anger really change that quickly to help a person who is sad? So this is what I mean by, how can you help someone else if you're not right first? Oh, I want to do this. Like, trust me, when I was 18, 19, I kept saying, I want to do this for my family. I want to own a business. I want to make all this money for my family. And that was before I had children. So that was okay to have those goals. But once I had kids, the priorities changed so much. I really had to give up this idea of helping the rest of my family, because now that I had children, I had to make sure that I was stable enough to raise them well without being spread too thin and doing things for everyone else in my family and lastly my children. Like, no, that pattern was beginning to happen because with immigrant parents or with parents who just didn't succeed in life, who never healed, who were on survival mode their entire life, if you have a parent like that, they more than likely expected one of their children and still are expecting one of their children to just take care of them. And that is okay, but if your parent is borderline narcissistic, they will expect you to put them first before your own children. And that is one thing that I need to put out there for anyone who is in the situation. You need to recognize if your parents are narcissistic, because the narcissism can come from the trauma. It can come from the pain that they're carrying from their past, but that's not something that you can heal or change. So just identifying and being aware of the narcissism can help you protect you and your family and can help, like, really for you to direct the energy in the right direction, in the best direction, not going backwards and giving a lot of yourself to your parents when you now have children to think about. So there are different dynamics. Some families work really well with a grandparent in the house and a child. A lot of really healthy families will depend on the grandparent taking care of the child, if the grandparent is able to, because some people will make their parents who are like too old take care of their kids, and like that's a different story. As long as your parents are able and willing and they want to take care of your kids, it should work out well. But if you have a parent at all who doesn't want to take care of your kids or doesn't do well with the stress of having children or having kids around, or maybe they're even a grandparent that just doesn't connect to the child because they didn't ever connect with you and then they never changed, so now they're doing it with that kid, with your son or your daughter or whatever. Recognize those patterns, because those are not healthy relationships. That may be because you're actually depending on them to babysit when it might be counterproductive for your family. It might even be to the point where the grandparent is only babysitting your kids because the grandparent wants something out of you. Like, let's just say my mom will only babysit my kids because she wants something from me later, or she wants to say that she helped me. I have a family member like this. It's not my mom, but it's a family member who would always offer to babysit, and then we would hear how bad of a babysitter she was. We had to stop that. So this way you can honor your roots without repeating unhealthy patterns. And that also means taking a look at the way you parent, or taking a look at your patience and your tenacity to keep going versus what you saw with your parents. Like, are you trying to take the good from them and not perpetuate the bad? Are you only demonizing them and saying that they never did anything for you? Because then that means you have some healing to do. If you can't see the good that your parents did do, then there might be some blockages within you. But if you see both the good and the bad, then you get to choose. A lot of us may feel guilty if we move forward. We may even feel guilty because we feel like, wow, our parents helped raise us here. I owe them the world. But what you owe is your future self a favor. You owe not just your future self, but your future lineage and all of the generational things that come after you, because you now are holding the totem pole. Your healing is not rejecting their sacrifice. It's fulfilling the sacrifice that they made in the first place for you to be happy, for you to be successful, for you to take the opportunities that you have here. And you doing that for yourself is honoring what they did, what they sacrificed. Once you become of these inherited patterns, you stop being on autopilot. You start thinking once or twice before you make a move, because awareness is where generational healing begins. Here's a nice quote that I think is very relevant. Trauma doesn't only pass through violence. Sometimes it passes through fear. So the fear that our parents had of not surviving, of not being stable, of not being loved, sometimes is passed down through our choices, the choices that we are making. It's something that we absorbed as children because we were so innocent that everything that was going on around us as a child, we absorbed it. without us knowing. And a lot of that stuff comes out now as an adult. So it's just about being aware of it so that you can shift and pivot accordingly. So I hope you liked this video. I hope that helped some of you guys just understand where your parents are coming from and how all of this awareness is really going to help you, not just with the relationship you have with your parents, but just the relationship you'll have with your future self, with anyone in the lineage that comes after you. So peace out, guys. I hope you enjoyed.